There's a microphone open somewhere, I think. Morning, Sarah. We're about to start, Sarah. If you wouldn't mind taking off your camera and microphone for now. We'll put it on when we ask you to talk. Okay, it's 10 o'clock.
It's on live. The webcast is live, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to this morning's meeting of the Prosperous Staffordshire Select Committee. It's Friday the 26th of February. We've got 3 items to discuss this morning. There's 2 items on the open agenda and 1 on the confidential second part of the meeting, simply because that has some commercial confidentiality arrangements attached to it, and therefore we'll be considering that in the second part of the meeting. But for now, if I may, just a couple of house rules. I think we're all familiar with them, but just to explain it for anyone who's watching, we ask members of the committee to take down their camera and their microphone while they're not speaking, just to save bandwidth and confusion on screen. We retain the chair on screen and also the speaker at that time, so that may well be the cabinet member that's joining us this morning to provide information and evidence to us, or a member of the committee who wants to ask a question at any particular time. So when people are called, if you could open up your video camera and your microphone at the same time, or simultaneously if you can, and then we can all see you. That obviously goes as well for officers who are here to support and give evidence as well. So thank you very much indeed for that, members. If I may start with apologies, please. Nick.
We have received no apologies for this meeting, Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest, please? I hear nothing. Silence. So we'll move on. Minutes
Sorry,
of the.
Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I couldn't get my hand up. I've got a smiley face by it. But anyway.
Right, Keith.
Sorry about that. Just anything to do with I know it's in the previous minutes of the previous meeting about small business loans and things like that, which is something that's been gone by. So I've given my apologies in the past. So I have to do it now. Okay.
Of course. Thank you very much for that transparency.
Move the minutes, Chairman.
I was just going to move on to minutes. Thank you very much, Councillor David Smith. So the minutes of the Prosperous Select Committee held on the 15th of January 2021, and David Smith has kindly agreed to approve. Is there a second, please?
I'll second, Chair. Thank you. Thank
you very much. And could I welcome Deputy Leader of the Council to the meeting, who's kindly taken off his video as well. So we'll be hearing from Philip White shortly. In fact, the next item on the agenda, good morning, Philip. The next item on the agenda is HS2 update, impact on Staffordshire. This is a report of the Deputy Leader and the Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor Philip White, who's going to give us a verbal update on this. And I know you're supported by Sarah Mallon, who's also on the call. So, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind opening up your video so at least we can see you there to support Philip. That's great. Thank you very much. Good morning. So over to you then, Philip.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. So my technology is just being a little bit unhelpful, so I'm just trying to get trying to get the detail in front of me. The paper is relatively brief, as you'll have gathered when you were reading through the papers, which means I'm happy to take you through it if you'd like me to, or we can go really to the substantive point, which is about the overall benefit to Staffordshire of what's happening. The individual items are relatively small in terms of what's there. So would you like me to go through those individual items line by line, or?
No, I was expecting you to give us a kind of a pitch, an overview as to how you saw this. Yeah.
So that's really helpful, Chair. Thank you. So I think the overview is during the construction phase, there's a limited range of benefits that are on offer to Staffordshire. So as you'll see from the paper, there is an effort from HS2 to buy locally when they're operating in an area. There is some employment generated by HS2 that's local. They also are employing a small but welcome number of apprentices from Staffordshire into a variety of trades and professions. and they do have a very welcome scheme available for organisations that have been impacted by the HS2 construction process, that people can bid into for various mitigations. But it's relatively small, in my opinion, compared to the impact that HS2 is likely to have on our area during the construction phase. The real benefits, such as they are, of HS2 will remain to be seen, and I, no doubt, like many committee members, am somewhat concerned that the basis on which HS2 was agreed was pre-COVID, with the travel patterns that prevailed then. So I think we're all waiting to see how that settles down. But ostensibly, the benefits that HS2 will bring will be the stop at Stafford, with real opportunities there to regenerate Stafford town and to generate far more economic activity in that area. And it's very pleasing that Stafford's benefited from a large sum of money from the Future High Streets Fund to get that regeneration going, along with support from the County Council and the Borough Council. And there are opportunities further north, particularly around developing a corridor initiative for the A50, A500, with the stations at Stafford and Crewe and the station at Towton near Nottingham as anchor points on that, which may receive significant investment from government over the next few years. But I think it's unescapable that those benefits are some way off. They're not clearly defined at the moment, and they predominantly are not along the route of construction. So what that means is that we have a duty to try and extract those benefits, both short term in terms of the mitigation, long term in terms of the benefits for our economy. And it should be noted that part of that will be an increase, if that economic activity does increase in those areas, an increase in our tax base that we can then put into services that will benefit residents across Staffordshire. But nonetheless, inescapably, you come back to the point of mitigation in terms of the effects of construction, because predominantly for people along the route, this is all about what is going to happen to them during that period. And those economic benefits, I think, are somewhat distant, both geographically and indeed in time. And I would like to be slightly more upbeat about that, but frankly, I think that is the position. There will be economic benefit for Staffordshire. I don't think it will predominantly be along the route of the railway line itself. Does that give you what you need as a starter?
It does actually, Philip. Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. I guess the way you're painting it there, and my thinking would be this is an immediate, medium and long term look at this in terms of what are the advantages that Staffordshire can draw on it. So, as you rightly say, in the long term, it is well into the future. Once it's up and running, once it's operating, it's not along the line. It's at the points of connection, so the stations, etc., and the economic benefit that will ripple out from that, we assume. To what extent, I guess that work is ongoing. But in the immediate time, there is already work taking place in Staffordshire on a very small scale, perhaps. I don't know whether that's setting up or exploratory, those sort of things. But I guess we all see little white vans in various parts. I guess, and when you talk to them, they have something to do with HS2. I'm not quite sure. But at some point, there is going to be, and I'm not quite sure whether we've quantified this in any detail, there is going to be activity, construction activity. There are going to be people on sites. There's going to be supply chains. There's going to be materials being moved around. So, whilst our county's been, if you like, disadvantaged by the disruption and the construction, there's also, right the way down to, if this cascades right the way down to where they're going to buy their sandwich at lunchtime. When you talk of other things, like impact of tourism, for example, we quantify that and say, well, we almost know how many bedrooms the Ironman event is going to produce and that sort of thing. Whereas in this, we don't seem to have quantified where the ham sandwiches are going to be bought, what's the impact on our local economy, because all those small micro type transactions caused by all those people coming into the area for the construction phase, and the suppliers bringing materials in and all that sort of stuff has an impact. It has an economic value. I'm just wondering how well we've understood and quantified that, and therefore are preparing the county for some of that. So while they're grubbing up and disrupting our county, are we selling them the sandwich?
Yeah, and if I can speak to that point, there has been a commitment by HS2. This is just not simply a Staffordshire commitment. This is in all of the areas where they've been working, that they would not only seek to buy local, and by seek it's quite a specific commitment that they will, in all instances where they're able to, they will buy from local businesses, both goods and services. And there is a commitment from them to quantify that as well. But I have to say the quantification has not, as far as I'm aware, and Sarah may be able to help with this as she's at the coalface day to day, but that quantification hasn't come forwards from them, which really is where the information should be emanating from, because they are the people who are buying the services, or hopefully are. Sarah, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, the quantification is something that, as you know from our conversation yesterday, that HS2 don't really do very effectively, and it's something that I've requested for them to start looking at. What they have done is they've actually made their intentions clear to the supply chain itself. So they've held over the past 12 months, a number of online supply chain events to make small and medium enterprise businesses aware of the type of opportunities that will be coming up. So they have done the promotion, but not the measurement, unfortunately. But that's something that I'm working on with them at the moment.
Yeah, it's never easy to do this sort of work, is it? A lot of it is guesswork and assumption. But at least, as you rightly say, Sarah, if the businesses are made aware and the opportunities are promoted, then I think that's a good step in the right direction. So can I bring in David Smith, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, had we not got COVID-19, I would invite you down to Hints to have a look at the massive work which is currently going on, which is causing chaos in the village. And I have to say, very little support and cooperation from HS2. And I really would like to say thank you to Sarah, who supported the community very, very strongly indeed. We have had a whole string of complaints. It's very, very difficult when you have a community meeting and none of the complaints can be discussed because they are live complaints. And so it sounds when you go to a community meeting as though there's nothing that's wrong, where in fact we have narrow lanes which are being accessed by very, very heavy vehicles and trying to get past cars that are parked and all sorts. It's an absolute mass of problems. I would also just comment on the community fund. It's perhaps unfortunate that I understand that the community fund doesn't cover contributions towards community churches, whereas when you look at villages, very, very often the village church is the community hall, it's the centre of activity, and it seems somewhat silly that that's excluded from the possible support that we can have. But I really would say thank you very much to Sarah. She's doing a great job for us. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. I'm not quite sure if there was a question in there, Philip. I don't know if you want to respond.
And the only thing I will say is, although one's never quite sure what counts as an essential journey or not, I did take a trip down to Hints myself a couple of weeks ago to see what was going on, and what I saw would correspond with what Councillor Smith has just described. So it's certainly true that the impact of construction is arriving in our area. So it would be jolly nice to see some of that positive impact landing as well.
Okay. Any further question on that, David Smith? You happy there?
Chairman, I would only add just that I wouldn't question what you've said about the economic benefit when you come to Mid Staffordshire and North Staffordshire, but there is only grief in South East Staffordshire. There is no benefit. It's faster, for example, to go to London from Lichfield Station than it is to go via HS2. It's all grief and no benefit, Chairman, as far as we're concerned, which is very unfortunate because there was an opportunity to have done something tremendous, but the lack of a station in South East Staffordshire really, I think, is a great omission, but that's all too late to correct. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I think you're right, David. Thank you very much indeed. Keith Flunder next.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's sort of linking back to both your comments and what Philip's already covered to some extent. I've looked through the benefit side of things. Speaking for the North and the Moorlands, and the Moorlands only have one train station. You know, we're in a backwater somewhat when it comes to other forms of transport in the Moorlands, and that's at Blythe Bridge, which is an area represented district. So I should have declared an interest in that way. I don't know. Anyway,
it's 50% in Stafford, by the way.
So again, sorry?
It's 50% in Stafford.
Oh yes, of course it is. Yes, of course it is. I didn't deny your access to Blythe Bridge at all there, Ian.
The westbound is in Stafford.
Absolutely, in your own patch. Yeah, I completely agree. No, the point I'm trying to make is that the benefits. Okay, I can see the benefits in terms of economics and contracts and money spending and all the rest of it. I just think it's a bit light on benefits that could come. I know that David's very negative, and in the south there's no input or anything like that. But will these new links affect the existing train services and who operates them and all this side of things? And if we're going to do sort of green infrastructure work and everything like that, I know that we've been talking about links from Blythe Bridge, from Creswell to Cheadle and all these other things like that, and also tourism and other links economically for other reasons. But I just think we're a bit light. I think that we could do something a bit more to look at. There's probably negatives as well, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a bit of a hole. And not that I would need to criticise, obviously it's a very complicated picture and everything else. But I do think that there could be something that could add a bit more to what is in the report, just to be able to understand a bit more, so that I think the project's going to be forced through and everything else. I know we're against it, etc., generically overall, but could we try and get something in the next report that is a little bit more balanced for the north or the mid of around Stafford, Lichfield, all these other things, and just say, as David's already alluded to, and Ian, about some idea of what could be if we only lobbied a bit more, or if we could maybe sort of force on them a bit more about looking at more trains running or something like that, or links to green structures, and maybe having areas where we can fit into new battery operated systems or something like that. I'm just thinking we're going to have to move very quickly to be able to get those benefits from what might be seen at the moment as mostly negative situation. So, as I say, I just think that we could maybe grasp the nettle a little bit more and just see where the roots go. That's a good one. I like that. Grasp the nettles and see where the roots go. There we go. That's what I meant. Thanks very much. Cheers.
So have you done enough then? Philip White, I think, is asking.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So one of the areas where we may see some benefit in due course is improved rail services on some of our other lines. So there is a consultation ongoing, which is part of the HS2 process, which is looking at what improvements we believe would benefit Staffordshire, and that's looking at two things really. It's offsetting impacts of HS2, but it's also looking at how we can offer greater connectivity into HS2 for passengers who use other lines. So we are in dialogue with the DfT about that, and it's fair to say that pretty much any and all of our railway lines would benefit from investment that would make them more effective at connecting into HS2. Specifically in your part of the world, Keith, the bid that's gone into the Restoring Your Railways Fund to open up the Leek to Stoke line would be of benefit in the round. I thought I might get a thumbs up from you for that. It'd be really, really fantastic if that is successful within that bid process. It's a big old job reopening that line, as I'm sure you know. There's some real engineering challenges along the route, but that would offer that connectivity through your area into Stoke, and then obviously from Stoke it's relatively easy to connect onto HS2. So there is a lot there, but again, it is potential rather than hard baked in. And I would imagine at some point, Chair, we'll talk about how we might sort of take this on as a work stream. And I think that transport element is one of the key strands. We've got a transport impact on our road network, but where are the transport benefits potentially going to come from? And I think that is something that would be really interesting to consider as we go through the construction process, and hopefully some of those benefits start to materialise in that area.
Good.
So, thank you, Chair. I just wondered if we can make sure it comes to the next time you come to the meeting, some idea of those options, and if there are any options, but also anything that we might be able to do as members to try and forward what we're trying to do in each of these areas. I mean, obviously, Ian's one side of the railway track, I'm the other. So,
I'm the wrong side of the track, then I think, Keith. Right? This select committee will be tracking and monitoring HS2 from now on, in a sense, and want to bring this regularly before the committee, so that we can monitor these impacts, whether they be positive economic ones or otherwise. And to hold to account both the cabinet members responsible for this and HS2 itself. So I think Philip is going to talk to us about that, I think, before we conclude this part of the meeting this morning. But thanks for that input then, Keith.
Thank you.
Can I move on then to Carl Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I agreed with the comments that Keith made, actually, and he covered a point that I would have made. But in relation to Kidsgrove railway station, for example, I would just like to say that actually HS2, we are already seeing some of the benefits that HS2 may bring, because in recent years, developers and investors have focused particularly around Kidsgrove station. And some of the comments when I've spoken to them in planning roles previously have been that the reason they were interested in that particular area was because HS2 was coming through to Crewe. And obviously Kidsgrove is only about 10-minute short trip from Kidsgrove railway station to Crewe on the East Midlands train. So it makes sense for us. And I think Kidsgrove in particular, and I know we need to be talking about the wider Staffordshire area, but I think this is important for North Staffordshire. We are that close that actually it's a real benefit for us up in the north. And I think that there are some real opportunities, and I think where we can actually work with HS2 to get the benefits, as has already been discussed, and those conversations should start as soon as possible, really. And I'm sure the county are aware of that. So ultimately, I see it as a real opportunity, but I do take on board the comments, because obviously since 2017 I've heard a lot more about HS2 since I got on the county council. You start to understand the real impact that the scheme may have on the rural areas, something that myself from an urban area probably wouldn't have thought about or considered. And I think it is, while some areas will really benefit, it is really important that we do take on board those concerns from people that have got the worries. And obviously, Philip, you've pointed out you visited an area and you've seen for yourself the disruption that could come. So we need to be ready for that and make sure we've got things in place to support our residents when that happens. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Carl. Philip, do you want to respond to Carl's points there?
I'll respond briefly. Thank you, Carl. It's nice to see you. And I broadly agree with what you've said. So on the point of the County Council's response to HS2, as I'm sure you know, that response has been ongoing and extensive for many years, and we're looking in Sarah at somebody who's been at the coalface of that for quite some time, She's one of many of our officers who've worked hard on that, and the political response you've seen in our council chamber on many occasions. This is all about those dual duties that we have. So we have a duty to extract the maximum economic benefit from HS2 for our citizens, whether we wanted HS2 or not is here, and we have that duty, and we need to do that well. And Kidsgrove is an excellent example of where that will come. Kidsgrove is blessed with 2 railway lines running through the station, but a not particularly lovely station which needs to be redeveloped, and it's pleasing that is now underway. We're both lucky enough to sit on the town deal board in Kidsgrove, and there's I'm hoping we'll get the final details soon, but up to £25 million of investment into Kidsgrove, which will be wonderful for the town, and it's right that the railway station is at the core of that. So that's an example of a benefit, dare I say it, for a town that probably hasn't seen a lot of benefits like that for quite some years. So it's really good that the government are doing that on the back of HS2. But there's no denying there are other parts of the county where it is an impact, and that balance in our work as the executive in the work of our officers, but also, dare I suggest it, Chair, in terms of the work of this committee, where you have a public forum where you can hold people to account. Absolutely, you must hold us to account as the executive of the county council in what we're doing and what our officers are doing. But I am very keen indeed that you do get representatives from HS2 in front of this committee regularly to look at both sides of that coin. So those benefits, be that economic development, transport improvements, be that improvements to our skills base in terms of people that they are either directly or indirectly employing and training. All of these things are very important. But on the other side of it, and I see looking down my attendees list that we have Councillor Jessel here, who I think is I think we are probably the yin and the yang on this in terms of I need to an extent to be Mr. Sunshine and extracting those economic benefits and deploying all of my charm and endeavour to do that. Councillor Jessel, on the other hand, needs to be leading the charge in terms of holding HS2 to their promises in terms of how they are going to go about the construction phase, and making sure that those impacts, which are unavoidable, but that they are dealt with in the most considerate way possible and minimising those impacts. And I think it's really important that you're scrutinising us on that activity. But ultimately, we are holding another body to account, and that body needs to present itself here on a regular basis so that they can be scrutinised as well in public. And I very much hope that the committee will do both of those things hand in hand. It's going to be one of the biggest pieces of work we will have to do as a council over the next few years. We will be very focused on it, but I think it would be really helpful if the focus of HS2 on our citizens was brought into this place. As I say, the public element of this committee, I think, is really valuable in that respect. I think that's enough of a plea, isn't it? So I'll leave things there. If that satisfies you, Carl, in terms of responding. I
think, Chair, that's a fair and measured response. Thank you, Philip.
And thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Philip, for that. That brings me on really to the kind of offline conversation that you and I had earlier this week regarding how we do therefore manage the ongoing overview and scrutiny of this key project, transportation and economic wise, impact, and as you say, both benefit and pain. And from the chair, I'm proposing that we have a standing item now, from now on this committee, at each committee, that will either see Philip or Julia, whichever is more relevant at the time. So if there's something that we need to discuss, update, look into, scrutinise, etc., we do that as a standing item. And also on a quarterly basis, we invite a representative from HS2 to come before us and allow us to scrutinise some of the concerns that we may have, some of the opportunities that we'd like to explore with them. So there's an opportunity, therefore, to hold both Cabinet members to account for what they're doing in terms of, in their role, holding HS2 to account, but for this committee to go direct to market, as it were, and see HS2 at the same time. So my recommendation, therefore, to the committee is that we do have a standing item and a quarterly meet with HS2 at this meeting, if we could. If committee feels that's a good thing to do, and I know Philip is supportive of that, and I believe Julia is supportive of that, then we could embed that into our work programme, if that's agreed. You can either put your hand up if you disagree, you can put your thumb up if you agree, or silence is acceptance, I think, is the legal maxim. Okay, I'm getting silence, so I'm taking that as a yes. Thank you very much, Keith. Okay, Philip and Sarah, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Particularly thanks also to Sarah, because I know this is your life now, isn't it? And you look remarkably well on it, and relatively stress-free, I think. So thank you very much indeed for all the professional work and help and effort that you're putting into this on behalf of the county and our residents. Thank you for your time this morning as well, Philip. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on then to item 5, and this is more of a verbal update. Now, welcome to the meeting this morning, Councillor Jonathan Price, who is the Cabinet Member for Education and Special Educational Needs and Development. So, Jonathan, good morning. We're hopeful that you're going to give us a presentation. You're quite in the sunshine there, if I may suggest. That's better. You're not looking at your best when the sun's directly on you like that. So over to you, Jonathan. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman. I have to say I am basking in the sun a little bit this morning. It's nice. It's nice to see. I propose, if that's okay with you, Chairman, that I do this in 2 parts. So the first part would focus on the education and return to school, with the support of officers as well, including Tim Moss. Take some questions and then move on to home to school transport with the support of Clive Thompson and Louise Clayton from the transport team. They are fairly lengthy, but I thought it was important. There's a lot of points in there I wanted to get across, particularly at this moment in time, and I'm sure members would appreciate a very thorough update. So if you're happy with that, Chairman, I will give that report.
That sounds perfect. Let's go. Thank you, Jonathan.
So currently education provision during the lockdown period, I'll cover sort of from the 5th of January 2021. All schools have remained open for vulnerable children and the children of key workers during the latest lockdown. Schools have provided remote learning for all other children and young people, only where there has been a recommendation by the Education Local Outbreak Control Team. Has a school closed the on-site provision due to the number of students or staff testing positive for COVID-19? Schools and school leaders have continued to follow the national guidance. A significant success of the response to the pandemic has been the support provided by the Education Local Outbreak Control Team. Since September 2020, this cell has responded to over 1,700 incidents, which have resulted in nearly 60,000 requests for children and young people to self-isolate, some more than once, in over 450 education settings, including nursery schools and colleges. During this lockdown period, the daily attendance of vulnerable children and the children of key workers has been around 20,000. This is 5 times the daily attendance during the first lockdown between the 24th of March 2020 and the 28th of May 2020. Primary school attendance is roughly around 30% of pupils attending each day, whilst in secondary schools this is roughly around the 8% of students. Special schools and early year settings have remained open to all children and young people who are continuing to attend. Schools have continued to work with the social care team to encourage regular attendance in the latest lockdown period. Out of population of nearly 3,000, 50% of these children with a social worker are attending school each day. Special schools and alternative providers have continued to work closely with parents, care and safeguarding professionals within the local authority to agree detailed risk assessments which have been used to inform the pattern of attendance, reflecting the most appropriate place of education for each individual child attending one of the specialist placements. Schools received increased requests for the children of critical workers to attend school. The size, layout and staffing in each school are different, which may have limited the number of children that could actually attend that school safely. As well as providing on-site education of vulnerable children and the children of key workers, schools were required to provide remote learning for these children whose attendance would be contrary to government guidance or law around COVID-19. Due to the dedication of teachers and school leaders in Staffordshire, schools were already delivering remote education where needed, and since the latest lockdown have been continually improving their provision in line with expectations and emerging best practice. Schools have developed their remote education offer so that it is equivalent to length to the core teaching pupils receive in school and includes both recorded or live direct teaching time and time for pupils to complete tasks and assignments independently. As you know, the DfE set out expectations of the amount of remote learning provided, and the minimum was at Key Stage 1, 3 hours a day on average. At Key Stage 2 was 4 hours a day, and Key Stage 3 was roughly 4 to 5 hours a day. As part of Ofsted's inspection activities, inspectors will during the spring term conduct monitoring inspections which will provide assurance that pupils in these schools are receiving the best possible education, whether through classroom teaching or remote education. To date, 5 schools in Staffordshire have received monitoring inspections. In addition to the 1,716 digital devices allocated to the local authority during the 2020 summer term, over 4,200 more have been allocated to the local authority maintained schools. In addition to this, academy trusts have been allocated digital devices for their schools as well across Staffordshire. Our Education Reference Group, established in May 2020, which included head teachers and CEOs of academy trusts and trade unions, continues to meet weekly to discuss the impact of guidance published by the DfE and specific COVID-19 themes for schools. This has recently involved discussions about the latest government guidance, testing for staff and students, COVID-19 vaccinations, free school meals and digital devices and their impact. Officers also maintain a twice weekly meeting with the regional DfE colleagues to feedback the views of Staffordshire schools and early education providers, share information and discuss upcoming guidance. All secondary schools are undertaking lateral flow tests with their staff on their school site. Students accessing on-site education may also have engaged with the testing. Primary school staff have received home testing kits, and early year settings use a combination of on-site and community testing. Dedicated mainstream and SEND entitled home to school transport has continued to be provided for these children who are entitled and continue to attend school, and I will obviously talk a little bit more about that later. During a recent roundtable discussion between the DfE and the West Midlands local authorities to discuss the plans for full opening of schools, Staffordshire emphasised the need for local flexibility in planning, the importance of receiving timely guidance so this could be implemented effectively and communicated to the school community appropriately. This guidance needs to include updated transport guidance so that the local authority can work with schools to develop local action plans where needed. And to prepare for the full opening of schools and education provision, we will continue to meet weekly with the reference group and our trade unions. We will continue to hold monthly network meetings for head teachers to share their experiences and learning, and that's extremely important. Hold a webinar for chairs of school governing bodies and local academy councils as well. From the 8th of March, all pupils will return to school apart from a small number who still continue to shield. For secondary pupils, there could be a phased return as all students will be offered lateral flow testing from the 8th of March. To prepare for this, our schools will be reviewing and, where necessary, updating their risk assessments, following the system of controls in DfE guidance to minimise the risk of infection, including for those schools with secondary age children, their plan for asymptomatic testing, reviewing the contingency plan for any outbreaks in school or any further changes in restrictions, and they will be preparing to communicate the changes in process to their school community. Rapid testing using lateral flow devices will be used to support the return on the 8th of March. For secondary school staff and pupils, there will be a move to home testing model for pupils following the first 3 on-site tests. The DfE guidance indicates that testing and return of secondary age pupils can be phased so that from the 8th of March, schools can manage the number of pupils passing through the test site at any one time. Following 3 tests at schools, pupils and staff in secondary schools will be supplied with the LFD test kits to self-swab and test themselves twice a week at home. Staff in primary schools will continue to test with LFD twice a week at home, as they are currently doing so. Primary age pupils will not be tested with LFDs. The full opening guidance has updated the recommendations on the use of face coverings. In secondary school, in addition to wearing face coverings by adults and pupils when moving around the premises, the DfE are now also recommending that face coverings should be worn in classrooms or during activities unless social distancing can be maintained. In primary schools, the DfE are recommending that face coverings should be worn by staff and adult visitors in situations where social distancing between adults is not possible. For example, when moving around in corridors and communal areas. Children in primary school do not need to wear a face covering. School attendance will be mandatory for all pupils from the 8th of March, and so the usual rules on school attendance will apply unless they are shielding or have to self-isolate. The response of staff to school leaders to date place schools in a very strong position for the full opening of schools from the 8th of March, and the information shared demonstrates the quiet confidence of school leaders in their preparation for the full opening of schools. So just on the last 3 points, and I have gone on a little bit, and I do apologise, the Ofsted Inspections. So the suspension of routine Ofsted inspections was announced on the 17th of May 2020. But routine inspections continue to be appropriate at the time while schools are fully engaged in responding to the coronavirus outbreak. The disapplication of the duty to continue routine inspections remains under review, and routine inspections will be reintroduced at an appropriate time. It is the intent that Ofsted will continue to conduct monitoring inspections during the remainder of the spring term. The plan is that routine grading inspections will resume in the summer term, but this is still to be confirmed. From an examination point of view, this year students in Year 11 completing their GCSEs and Year 13 completing their A-levels or other Level 3 qualifications will receive grades determined by their teachers, with assessments covered with what they've been taught and not what they have missed. Teachers will be required to choose a range of evidence to underpin their assessments, including coursework, in-class tests set by the school, and the use of original questions provided by the examination board and mock exams. Exam boards will be issuing grade descriptions to help teachers make sure their assessments are fair and consistent. Again, a very, very key point. Quality assured by the exam boards will also be provided as a meaningful way of checking in the system. And just a little bit around school staff and other education provider vaccinations. The Department of Health and Social Care has consistently stressed that it is important to roll out COVID-19 vaccinations according to the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisations. Priority order of cohorts to ensure those at highest risk are vaccinated first. The group of frontline social workers eligible for vaccines as part of Cohort 2 has been tightly defined in the National Standards Operating Procedure. The Council has been working with all education providers to identify those employees working with children who are clinically and extremely vulnerable, care for our support children with the most profound disabilities or other health conditions that make them exceptionally vulnerable to COVID, or employees that have been directly in contact with participants during lateral flow testing, such as supervising or assisting swabbing or processing samples. For those who are not eligible just yet, they will be offered a vaccination as part of the national programme and in the priority order set out by HM government. As I said, I apologise for the long-windedness, but there were a lot of important points that I did want to get across and try and preempt some of the questions perhaps that would have been raised. So thank you, Chairman. Are you muted, Chairman?
You're on mute.
I do apologise. I normally keep my microphone open, then the one time I close it, I forget to reopen. So don't apologise, Jonathan. That was a really comprehensive and very useful appraisal of where we are and what has been happening in our schools, which is really important for us to get to understand, and to offer some assurance to our communities in the way this is being handled and managed, both by schools and the support's been given through yourself, Chair, Jonathan, and through the service to schools. I guess this splits into two things, doesn't it, really? One is the health and safety and the public health of the school community, if you like, and the implications of that on the wider community. And secondly, and of equal importance, the quality of teaching and learning and the educational outcomes for children. Those are the two key aspects, aren't they? And at the moment, they're a little bit in conflict with each other. But I think my own observations, and it's very limited in terms of my experience of this, is that the quality of the online learning and the structure of remote learning has significantly improved since the start of lockdown. I mean, schools have now really developed this as a key part of learning. It's not perfect. It's better than nothing. But I guess that varies as well, doesn't it, from settings in terms of age group and schools. Do you have any indication as to how schools have been managing this remote learning, and particularly in things like support to parents? Because we keep hearing this, don't we? It's a real stressor for parents to do the home learning, and there's a great responsibility on parents. And of course, home setting different. Parents can be more busy than others. So I'm just wondering what your take is on that in terms of the school's ability to deliver, the school's ability to support both pupils and parents.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm in a unique position myself, I suppose. I mean, my daughter is currently doing A-levels, and I have a SEND child who is 11. Both have struggled with home learning. Now, I've spoken to a few schools around the issues of virtual learning, and I think the general consensus between teachers and myself is they would still prefer to have those children within the classroom setting. You are absolutely right. It has improved across the board, and I've seen examples of home learning. They are much better now than when we first started. Obviously, we had issues. We had issues around IT, which has been resolved, and I'm pleased to see that everybody has the IT equipment that's required, and there've been support groups around that as well. Teachers I've spoken to as well, and it was interesting to say that actually home learning is much more tougher for them than actually having the children in class, and they've found it as time has progressed quite exhausting. So that was very interesting to hear. I mean, my personal take up, I want to see every pupil within class where it's now safe to do so, and I think it's absolutely right that we bring those back in. I also have Tim Moss, who's with me as well, and he may be able to give you a little bit more of a picture around home learning.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll bring you in, Tim, but I think it's important for us to place on record our appreciation of the work that teaching staff and school leaders have done on this in terms of the transition to online learning in such a short space in time. It's been a really steep curve for them, and it's been a real challenge for them. But I think it's one that they've risen to in the majority of schools, and if not all schools in the county. Clearly, there's going to be a variation and variety in terms of what's been achieved and what can be achieved. But in the main, I think we can be quite pleased. It's not ideal, as you rightly say, Jonathan. We want children back in school, and we want them learning and developing the way they should be. But I think as a compromise here, they've done a superb job. Tim, do you want to come and explain to us a little bit more about that in terms of online learning?
Morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair. Just following on from that, I think, as you say, that schools have developed their remote learning offer, and I think we have to kind of emphasise the remote aspect to it. So for some youngsters, that has been kind of virtual in the sense of an online offer, whereas for others, and schools have been working very closely with those families, that has been and remains a paper-based exercise. But what we know is that where that's taking place, that schools are in contact via telephone and having discussions with families over the phone. One of the things that we established in the first lockdown and have continued to provide to schools is that list of youngsters that the local authority is concerned about in terms of their vulnerabilities. And certainly that has continued through into the second or this lockdown, so that we can have those ongoing dialogue around those youngsters who it may be of more benefit to be attending school because they're entitled to, and therefore working with the school, working with our social care colleagues, and working with the families to get them into school. So there's that kind of evidence as well that's gone across the period of time. But all schools have developed that offer, and as Jonathan's referenced, Ofsted are now inspecting that to understand the quality of that provision. And to date, whilst those inspection reports haven't been published, and so they're still obviously confidential, that no concerns have been raised to us about that quality of provision.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you very much indeed, Tim. I'll move on, if I may, to Keith Flander.
Thank you, Chair. Should declare some interest here because my wife works in one of the schools in the county, and both my children go to school, a bit like yourself, Jonathan. Can I just say that home learning and home tuition has been difficult for parents, in particular. I can vouch for that. It's not easy to get them to sit down and do what they need to do. Even getting up is not that necessarily that easy, and it's been mind-numbingly different, shall we say, to keep them going. And I know that my son, for example, is in the sixth form. I think that to correct what's happening with him and his loss, because he's virtually lost 2 years of school during his A-levels, and I think the catch-up for them in college is something obviously we're not dealing with now, but I think that's something that will have to be looked at elsewhere potentially. But for my daughter and others, she's disappointed that she won't, as in her opinion, she has to take exams. It might be the first year that has to take exams again, and she's going, why does it have to be me, and all the rest of it. So I think there is some mental health and other things like that children have to get ready back into school and realise that's partly their responsibility as well, particularly the older children. I'm sure they do. But there is an element about catch-up. That was my main point, is how do we get the cohorts of children that have lost, anything up to a year and a half in schooling at the moment, how do we get those standards back up? How do we support schools to get those standards back up and everything else? And I must say, from a learning point of view myself, virtual parents' evenings with countdown clocks and everything else, and then teachers trying to scramble an answer out after 3 or 4 minutes for each pupil has been somewhat of a learning curve for myself as well, I dare say for yourself and others as well around potentially listening to this. But I do think that there has been some struggling there, and I think the parents next time, or if anything else occurs in future, I do think the parents need to be more involved, particularly with the online learning and everything else. And I think we've learned that as time goes on. And certainly I do regret not necessarily pushing as hard as perhaps I should have done. And the other thing is, of course, is that the school canteen here, formerly known as my kitchen, opens at 12:30. So I just thought I'd just try and let you know that there are deadlines in the school timetable that now happens in every household around the country as well. So a slightly positive point is that some of the links between community and some of the particularly primary schools, potentially other schools, but have been improved in some areas. And I do think that some of those ideas going forward, I've got a meeting, I know we've had a quick chat ourselves on that. I don't know whether you could sort of, let me, or just state that you are still interested in going forward with those community links as well. So that was it really, the catch up and community links. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Keith. And I hope you've got a good repertoire of puddings over there, Teen, in terms of the roly-poly pudding and lumpy custard or something.
Sticky toffee pudding for you if you want to come round. It's entirely up to you.
Pudding. That sounds like
Canteen opens quite soon for you.
Sounds ideal. Sounds ideal.
I thought it was semolina.
Semolina, can't stand it. Anyway,
Mondays.
Folks, let's just concentrate for a moment. Jonathan, serious questions there, really. Two points, really, about the engagement and about the, I guess, the online catch-up. And I guess national government have devolved some funding to schools to try and either arrange summer schools or things like that. What's the picture look like in Staffordshire to help children to catch up?
I know that Councillor Sutton has had some additional funding to help with holiday activities and food, and that's something separate. Doesn't necessarily include education, and that's extremely important. Now, I know that some funding has been allocated. Those announcements were only made yesterday and the day before, so I'm still looking at the detail at the moment. Tim Moss may have a little more information on that than I do currently. But we're still playing catch up with that information, so that might be worth referring to Tim if we could, please.
Yeah, Tim, any again, early days, so we're probably in the guessing stage at the moment.
Well, in terms of, yes, I suppose the positive thing is that there has been a commissioner appointed by the department. So Sir Kevin Collins is the commissioner around the recovery. As you will all have heard previously, the government announced £1 billion worth of funding, which equated to £80 per pupil in a primary school, in a mainstream school. And £240 per youngster in a specialist provision. That was back in the summer previously. But further announcements have been made this week, and as Jonathan's indicated, we're just looking at the detail around that. Three aspects really. So one is around a further additional recovery premium that, again, particularly to focus around those youngsters who are most disadvantaged, and that will be linked to pupil premium. The second element to it is around the summer schools. I think you've already referenced, Ian, in terms of looking at that from a secondary provision. And again, we want to understand the detail of that, which will be coming out. Further details should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And then the third element that we haven't seen yet, and I think is actually probably the most important one, which is an enrichment strand. And I think this kind of picks up on that social, emotional, mental health, preparing youngsters for education again, is something that, for me, that whilst we talk about catch up, that this is going to be over an extended period of time, and is something that we're not going to catch up in the next 3 to 4 months. So we need to be thinking about that long-term impact on youngsters, particularly some of our youngest youngsters, because if we think about their cognitive skills, their social skills, they're all developed at that youngest age. And those are the skills that we need to be thinking about, how we ensure that youngsters continue to develop those. So 3 additional strands that we'll be looking at over the coming months.
That's really useful. Thanks, Tim. And Tim, whilst we've got you, if you could just borrow for a second, in terms of uptake of home learning, I'm guessing that schools haven't been able to take, if you like, formal registers of children, and in terms of trying to ensure that all children participate in all lessons, I imagine that's been the biggest challenge of all in many respects in terms of getting that participation. So there's a likelihood that there are children that have participated far less in that than others, and therefore that gap of attainment through teaching and learning is going to be wider than normal. Is that one of the strands? Is that one of the focuses of catch up?
Yeah, so that's that recovery premium for those particular youngsters where their engagement has been less than other youngsters. You're right. One of the challenges I think our schools have had, and have worked really hard with is that if you're not engaging in the online learning, then the potential of actually looking at as to whether they should be attending school has been something that they've been looking at. And schools have been doing all sorts of activities to try and encourage and engage them, but there has been for some youngsters that lack of continued engagement. But schools have kept records around who is engaging, how are they engaging, and when are they engaging, so that they're aware of those youngsters where they probably got bigger concerns because of some of their engagement over this period of time.
Thanks, Tim. I noticed that parents have been putting up bunting ready for March the 8th, and I'm sure there are many parents that are looking forward to getting children back into school, which would be great. Great. Can I move on then to Syed Hussain, please? Morning, Syed.
Morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jonathan, and for the report and the team. And first of all, I would like to associate myself with you, Chairman, and pass my utmost gratitude to the teachers, actually, what they are doing. Fantastic, simply, and they're doing beyond their call of duty. While I am sitting in here, I am observing my 3 children, 2 in high school and 1 is in primary school, is break. So apologies if you listen some music or something, he was doing it. And also another issue as well, that the countrywide, there was a huge challenge with the free school meals and holiday hunger. And I must say that our county has handled it very nicely, and I'm really grateful for everyone's effort. And it could be something that other countries can follow or something in the future as well. And my whole expectations as well, there was my expectation for the teachers, actually, if it is possible from your own point, if you can lobby with our MPs or something, our teachers, they're priceless assets to us. And is there any way if you can prioritize their vaccinations program? And I just wish a successful vaccinations program for them, because they are the one who will be looking at the most precious thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Syed. I think Jonathan has already explained the kind of rationale behind vaccinations for teaching staff and the more vulnerable members of teaching staff. But Jonathan, do you just want to reinforce that, if you don't mind? Thank you, Syed.
Yeah, thank you, Syed, for that. I am aware that some of our MPs are currently lobbying government to try and prioritise teachers and teaching staff, but we follow government guidelines, and you're absolutely right, Chairman. I mentioned earlier that we follow the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisation, and we have to stick rigidly to that. But again, I did mention that anybody, particularly in special schools working with vulnerable children, have already been immunised. So we will follow DFE guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. And particularly, if you wouldn't mind bearing with me for a moment, it's particularly interested to hear from Jessica Schulman, who is a school governor representative. So could you put your mic in there? Good morning, Jessica.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Just in praise of schools, really, and also in praise of school governors. We don't get a lot of thank yous when the thank yous are going out. Just to how well schools have responded to the challenges of the past 12 months. And also school governors, we've had to really adapt. We've had a lot more meetings around risk assessments than we would normally have. We've been on webinars to understand how we monitor the quality of remote learning that's in place. And particularly, most of us have switched into supportive mode. We're there to support and challenge school leaders. But I think we've got into support mode, making sure there's an undercurrent of challenge there, but particularly around well-being and mental health for all. I think we've done particularly well. I'm sure any of you would be welcome to come and have a look around the remote learning that Codsall High Federation have done, or St Chad's in Pattingham. We've done really well. My other point was around Year 10 and work experience. A lot of Year 10 students would be going out to work experience this summer, and they're not able to do that because of various bits and pieces. And I think that there's a missed opportunity for our young people who are not, it's so useful to experience the workplace, and they're not able to do that. So I just wanted to raise that point as an opportunity, maybe for something to be looked at perhaps by the council for next year, as to what could be done to support our young people in experience of the workplace.
A really important point, I think, Jessica, which has probably been kind of overlooked in all of this, isn't it? But still an important part of development for young people. So, Jonathan, do you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or Tim, maybe, I don't know.
I just wanted to say, from the work experience point of view, that's a really, really important point, and I really appreciate you raising that. I'm also aware from some of the head teachers that I've spoken to that the governing body has been the absolute rock behind the head and support for teachers through this as well. I'm a previous chair of governors from a small primary school, and I know the work that you guys do behind the scenes to keep the school running and holding to the school to account as well. But I know the support that's been given has been phenomenal from all governing bodies, and I can't thank you and fellow governors for the really hard work that's been done.
Thank you.
Jessica, can I ask, Jessica, that you maintain the pressure a little bit on this, because I think when businesses get back up and running, the second half of the year predominantly, it would be good to kind of try and raise the profile of this need to see whether, through schools and businesses, that we actually don't lose it and ensure that it's there and ready to go back to, whether that be next year or whether there's a late opportunity this year for some of those children in year 10 that have missed their work experience opportunity. But if you wouldn't mind championing this for us a little bit, Jessica, and bringing it back to us at some point, that would be really useful.
Yeah.
So we don't lose it. I think it's important.
Yeah, I think it has been overlooked largely and it's such an important thing for young people to experience, not just in terms of careers, but in terms of outside the school environment. So, yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks
very much. David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be interested to know whether we can learn anything from our experience over the last year. I was very fortunate to have gone to British Columbia to look at their distance learning system. And apart from the fact they get together for summer schools, almost entirely their education, because of distances, is done by distance learning. The advantage that it has, in some ways, it doesn't do away with the need for children to be together. But the advantage that it has, it provides a complete record of a child's performance, the teacher's performance, and the school's performance. And in that analysis of performance, it actually does away with an organisation in Canada like Ofsted. Ofsted becomes totally obsolete because you have the sort of records of a child's performance without needing some sort of expensive overview from an organisation like Ofsted. And I just wonder whether you had any thoughts about that. Thank you, Chairman.
From my point of view, I think, David, sounds colourless and frightening. It sounds like managing, the old-fashioned sort of control management of certain businesses that monitor people's laptop use and phone use, which I'm sure there isn't a way teaching and learning, quality teaching and learning really happens. I understand what you're saying there, David. There's an opportunity here perhaps for some blended learning and perhaps use of technology in the future, as well as class-based and other applications of teaching and learning. Would that be your approach, Jonathan?
Yeah, we certainly have learnt lessons, and we do need to look at some of that blended learning. But it's not just about the learning, it's about the social and emotional well-being of children and development with their peers. And this is why I think it's absolutely key that these children need to be in school. So, yeah, there are incidents and circumstances where I think that will be quite important. But especially in early years through development, those children need to be within the school setting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chairman, I wasn't questioning that. I was simply saying that we have an opportunity to learn from what's happened and streamline some of the things that we're doing, which would put more money into education and less into administration. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, David. It's a very fair point, and forgive me for distorting it, but it's a fair point that there is some learning opportunities about how we can use technology and schools can use technology to enhance rather than replace. Thank you very much. I thought I saw Simon Tagg's hand raised. Simon, are you?
Yeah, sorry, you must have gone down of its own accord. I'm having sort of technical problems this morning, I think, with the internet, like some other people. Thank you, Chair. No, I think I'd like to pay tribute to all the teachers, as previous speakers have done, who've worked throughout this, whether they've been obviously in the classroom or providing that virtual teaching. I think unsung heroes in many ways. A lot of people think because the schools are out, so to speak, that the teachers aren't doing anything. We know that's not the issue, and that a lot of work has been going on, a lot of hard work and changing the way that they work, which is very difficult, I'm sure, for a lot of teachers. I think it's really important that pupils do go back for their education on March the 8th, and also for the wider economy, of course, Chair, as well. And I think everything that Jonathan says I endorse, and the approach that's been taken, and particularly I think, Chair, on the home testing, where the switch to home testing after I think it's those first 3 tests in the school, I think is excellent. I think, Chair, as we are the wider economic Prosperous Committee that looks at the economy in general, I think that should lead the way for the rollout of home testing for businesses, for even attending events, and also for even for the sort of the test and dine approach going forward. I think home testing could really be a liberator as we build up those vaccinations as well, and the 2 vaccinations and home testing could be a way of reopening the economy. But we'll see how it goes here in the schools. I think it'll be a good way of keeping sort of COVID under control as we bring schools back. So endorse everything Jonathan has said. I think thank you to all the county staff that have been involved throughout as well, sort of guiding schools and also as they reopen on March the 8th. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Simon. That's a really good point as well. And Jonathan, do you have confidence about the testing facilities and approach that schools are going to be taking?
I do have confidence, but it does rely also on a little bit of honesty. I mean, I always look at both sides of an argument, and I can be a little pessimistic sometimes. I just hope that we don't end up with incidents where perhaps a parent wants to go to work, has a positive test. I've still got to send my kids into school regardless. So some of this requires education from ourselves to make sure that people realise just how important it is to be honest around these tests. And I think that's the only little chink that I have a concern with.
But you think schools are capable of delivering it from their side in terms of the physical testing and managing that? I
do, yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. And finally, just a quick one. Can we just give us an assessment of the digital aspects of teaching and learning, particularly remote learning? And we've heard a lot, haven't we, about children not having equal access to technology to allow them to take part in online learning. What's been the picture here in Staffordshire, and how have we managed that?
I did mention the numbers earlier, and that I felt that we were fully.
I thought I'd noted everything down, but I missed that one. So sorry.
No, it's a really, really important question, Chairman. And actually, I will bring Tim in if he can give us just a brief update of where we are with that. I think that would be really important.
Yeah. Tim, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say, in terms of the delivery of devices, so in the previous academic year, those were delivered to the local authority, who delivered them out to schools. From September, that has changed, and so the relationship is between the school, individual schools, and the department. From a maintained schools perspective, it's over 4,200 additional devices have been provided. What we know is that schools and settings again have also made devices available. Some of the challenges have not necessarily been the devices, but the kind of the broadband access. And so that's been some of the challenges for schools and for parents. So again, a mixed picture across Staffordshire. But again, where there's been particular challenges, then schools are working with families to try and overcome them.
Great, good. Thank you very much indeed, Tim. Okay, I have no more questions unless there are any more questions.
Yeah, can I just butt in to say that there was.
Of course.
There was some question about people registering and things like that for online training. From my experience and from my master's experience, they do actually follow up on all children that don't attend the virtual classes as well, from my experience, and then all the mental health issues and everything else do come forward. So that has been happening. I think there was a bit of a question earlier about whether or not children are missing their education. But I know most schools and teachers have been working really hard to try and make sure that everyone's inclusive with the online learning that's been going on. That was all. And thanks to the teachers for doing all that. Obviously, it's hard work. Thank you.
And thanks for your input there, Keith. That's very useful. Thank you. So, Jonathan, I don't think we've got any more questions for you, but thank you very much indeed for your time and for the comprehensive.
Chair, there was also an oral update on school transport.
Oh, I'm so sorry we forgot part 2. Do you know what? I was timing this, I thought, to perfection then. And yeah, we do need to look at school transport. I'm so sorry. Thanks for the reminder. Back to you then, Jonathan. I'm afraid it's not time to go just yet. School transport update, please.
That's fine. Just before I continue, Chairman, I just wanted to quickly briefly say thank you to all our schools and teachers, particularly as well our education COVID outbreak team within Staffordshire County Council. They've done an immense job with a very small team. And then obviously to Tim Motts and the education team as well, which is extremely small too, and have been punching well above their weight and have improved vastly the relationship between us and the authority and our schools. And I shall now move forward on to home to school transport. You will be pleased to know that my summary on that is not quite as large as the previous one. So to provide a summary on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has had on home to school transport service and how it's been managed, including decisions and some of our future planning. So the home to school transport team are currently responsible for arranging procurement and contract management of more than 950 routes, operated by more than 150 transport providers and carrying roughly 8,000 entitled pupils to and from school on a daily basis. At the best of times, this is challenging and is managed by a small team of experienced and dedicated officers. During the last 12 months, the team has worked tirelessly to support the pupils, parents and schools they serve, as well as supporting the transport operators and bus companies that are crucial to the smooth and effective running of our school transport network. The team has focused achieving on the following 3 aims: the provision of transport for all entitled pupils that should be attending school, which was challenging at times as numbers changed almost daily as schools worked to put in place rotas and systems to support as many pupils as possible, and new transport arrangements were required for pupils attending school during Easter and even on bank holiday last year. Second point is working closely with and supporting our transport operators and local bus companies to ensure they remain sustainable and in the medium to long term. For many, their usual market and business disappeared overnight, and as such, many found it difficult to survive financially. The loss of swimming contracts, leisure excursions, holiday bookings, etc. has caused hardship among the coach operators we work with, and the lockdown has significantly impacted on taxi operators as a nighttime economy is non-existent. Supporting our operators was and still is the right thing to do to ensure their sustainability, which will be financially beneficial for us as an authority. And then the third point, supporting school staff, parents and pupils during these challenging times through regular communication to ensure transport provision is maintained at all times where it's been needed. In addition to the day-to-day work of the transport team, last summer the government instructed local authorities to develop traffic demand management or TDM plans to address the movement of the entire school population, of which there were over 112,000 pupils a day travelling to and from schools of their accord in Staffordshire. This was a significant undertaking which performed a small miracle to develop a programme of work to support the return of all pupils to school last September, including producing a bespoke active school travel plan for nearly every school in Staffordshire. And I know that some of our members have seen those plans as well. Also to deliver a digital active travel campaign. This was a massive collaboration effort led by the school travel team and includes partners from school transport, school admission, highways, car park enforcement, crossing patrol service and input from head teachers. And when you think there are over 400 of these done by an extremely small team that we have at the County Council with the support of others, is a massive undertaking. The main key decisions that have been made through this, transport operators have continued to be paid full with their contracts, even while stood down due to COVID matters, and subsequently through agreements at SLT Gold. This has been critical and ensured we maintain a viable home-to-school network in Staffordshire. If any of these companies folded prior to trying to get our children back to school, that would leave us with a very, very big problem. Bus operators have continued to receive ENCTS, which is the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme, reimbursement at pre-COVID levels, which has ensured bus services have continued to operate and support pupils that use public transport to access school. This includes entitled and non-entitled pupils. The vacant scheme was suspended as the transport team needed to maximise capacity for entitled children to take pressure off the local bus network and allow for greater social distancing. That's currently still in place. Post-16 payments refunded in recognition of periods of non-travel last year and partial refunds this year. Personal travel budget payments continue to be paid unless parents advised their children were not attending school and therefore payment was not required. This ensured no family was left in financial hardship. The cost of enhanced cleaning regimes undertaken by all of our operators has been covered by us, and supplies of PPE have also been made available for operators. Additional capacity on local bus services to support the return of all pupils to school last year. On one route, 3 additional vehicles were required, all funded by our DFE grant. Transport stood down has been reallocated to support other areas, including transporting people to vaccination centres. So in summary, during the pandemic, good working relationships with officers and bus companies has become more stronger. And many operators have written letters of thanks for the support the County Council has shown them during these challenging times. The transport team has achieved so much, for which we are all extremely grateful. And I must also thank all the teams that supported the service, including school admissions, the education team and highways, to name but a few. The main focus, of course, now is for the team to ensure that transport is fully operational, ready for school return on the 8th of March. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jonathan. Again, very comprehensive. Just a quick one from me to kick off, and that is in terms of an assessment of, as you rightly say, getting transport back up to normal when the time comes, and that's not very far away. Are there any early signs of gaps where providers are unable to provide, or are there any other kind of issues that are on the horizon that will make the startup difficult?
I spoke with the transport team a couple of days ago, and I'm not aware of any major issues from a transport point of view, but either Clive or Louise may be on this call, and perhaps they will be able to provide a bit more of a update on that. Good,
thank you. And the other one for me is really about special needs transporters. That presumably has been continuing as normal, and there are no issues around that.
No, and that's part of the reason why we've tried to support these with continued payments as well throughout the pandemic. Because if you withdraw the support, they fold. They're not available to us when we then need to get back, and that's been absolutely critical. And the transport team have been very diligent around that as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I don't see any questions from members. No? Okay. Well, I think that's actually been a very comprehensive report, to be honest, Jonathan. I think committee, I might be wrong, and just let me double check. I think committee's satisfied. Oh, sorry, I got Bernard Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy with what Jonathan has spoken about as far as transport is concerned. But transport goes far deeper than what Jonathan's been talking about, whereby I'm sure he understands the problem in South Staffordshire about the Burton to Codsall journey that children have to take. And it's this 3-mile distance that is creating all the problems for people to get their children from transport from Burton into Codsall. And I think we should look at the situation of this distance being the divider that says this is why you can or you can't have transport to school, because the problems of safety are not even considered, where the safety of those children going from Burton to Codsall is very, very dodgy. And that's because of the route that they have to take. So I'm sure that this isn't the only area where these problems exist. But I do think what we need to have is some way of getting around that 3 mile problem, which is what says you can have or you can't have transport. And I think, we need to be able to look at the safety aspect of these children. Remember, some children, particularly in other areas, I mean, they've been taken off the road by, well, let's just say motorists. And it's very dangerous for some of the children to walk 3 miles where you've got lots of traffic going backwards and forwards. So I do think we should be looking at other ways of getting around the problem of this 3 mile that says you can or you can't have transport to school.
Thank you, Bernard. And I suspect entitlement is probably something we're not really talking about this morning, but I think safe routes to school is an important aspect, isn't it, Jonathan? And I think that's what Bernard's speaking to here, about finding safer routes for children to get to school, particularly where they have to travel more than 3 miles, and that might be on foot.
Yeah, I won't obviously get involved in a conversation around any one particular route, but I have walked that route, and I've walked it with Councillor David Williams as well. There were a couple of areas I was unhappy with, and I'm pleased to say that works were being done to make that particular area safe. But I'm not a highways engineer, so I can't really comment beyond that. We are looking at home to school transport, of course, and I think we go way beyond what is our statutory duty on that anyway. The County Council is fairly flexible, but if you want to have a conversation around that outside of this meeting, Bernard, I'm more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Bernard. Can I move on to Keith Flunder, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, my comment is just very rapidly, just for some of these bus company and operators, I know the ones around Biddulph stepped up to the plate when needed in terms of trying to get other people to vaccination centres, and that included the town hall in Biddulph and everything else. So I just really want to emphasise the fact that the whole community and the obviously the people who are operators in this area are part of the community, and they did step up when needed in this area. And I'd just like to very much thank them and praise them for all the work that they did in supporting the vaccination centres in and around the county for those that stepped up. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I think that was more of a comment, Jonathan, rather than a question. I believe
it was. I just wanted to support the statement. Thank you.
I do. Yeah, we appreciate that, Keith. Thank you very much indeed. So, Jonathan, unless there's any final comments from you, I think we are there for at the end of this part of the meeting.
No, thank you for allowing me to come to the committee today and to speak. Just to echo Councillor Flunder's point, he's absolutely right. The transport teams and the operators that we use have stepped up to the plate during difficult times, as has everybody else. Have done an absolutely fantastic job. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jonathan. Have a good day. And Tim, if you're going to leave as well, thank you very much indeed for your input this morning. Much appreciated. Have a good day.
Thank you, Chair.
And therefore, if people wouldn't mind bearing with us while we move on to item 6, which we would normally put at the end of the meeting, but because we've got a part 2, we're going to do it at the end of this, which is the open part of the meeting, which is item 6, the work programme. With the exception of bringing in, I think, the item on on HR2 more often, I think the work programme. Nick, am I right in thinking I bring you in on this, if you don't mind?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. There is just one additional item. I have sent you an email, Chair, that they are requesting that the Staffordshire Community Learning Annual Self-Assessment Report for 2019-20 comes to the committee on the 15th of April. It's an annual report that you receive each year, and the timing is right. So I'm asking for the committee's approval to bring that in addition to the 2 other items that are on the agenda at the moment.
What's the report again?
It's the Staffordshire Community Learning Annual Self-Assessment Report.
And what's our role in that? What do they want us to do with it?
It is basically it is received by you each year, Chair, as a committee, and it's for your consideration and comment before it goes elsewhere.
Okay. So if members are happy with that, I'm personally not a big fan of for information type reports, but if there's something we can contribute to it.
Can I just comment, Chair? I actually spoke to the officer yesterday, and your committee made a number of comments on last year's report that have now been incorporated into this year's.
Then if
so
we can
it has been amended following your comments, Chair.
If we can be productive and useful, then I think it's worthwhile that we do that. I see Darryl Ayres has joined us. So, Darryl, is there something you wanted to?
Just to reassure you, Chair, this isn't for information. You scrutinise the performance of the service that delivers adult and community learning each year, and it feeds into our Ofsted report and our improvement plan for the following years. It's a really important piece of work.
That's really useful. Thanks, Darryl. Michael Metcalf, please.
And also, Chair, I'll also work with the officers to include HS2 as you've discussed this morning.
I think we've agreed there, haven't we? So if we can weave that into the plan. Michael Metcalf, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. I simply would like to request that the annual report from the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, which I chair, is simply distributed to the Select Committee, Scrutiny Committee for information.
Thank you. So,
Chair, I will work with the officer that supports Reverend Metcalf on that, and I'll make sure that happens.
Yeah,
thank you.
So that's a distribution offline for member comments. Is that right?
Yes, Chair. I think it's an information item. It does not need to be on a committee agenda.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for raising that. Good morning. Thank you. Anything else then, Nick?
Sorry, I was on mute, Chair. As long as I've got the committee's agreement to those amendments, no, Chair.
Okay. Again, silence is acceptance unless we pipe up and have our thoughts on this. Or if anybody's got, that's the Vice Chair. Thanks very much indeed, Tina, agreeing. And is there anything members want to comment on or add to or etc. on the work programme? Are we satisfied with that as it stands? We're almost at the end of the municipal year, and I guess we'll want to kind of revisit this in a bit more of a thorough going over in the new municipal year anyway.
Could I just comment, Chair, that any items that are still outstanding on this committee's work programme during the current administration will, of course, be carried forward for consideration of the new committee following the elections?
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, of course. David Smith.
Just a thought, Chairman. Are we going to scrutinise the climate change agenda?
We are. Nick, can you help me? Which I can't recall which. We were going to, I hope, have Simon, who led on that piece of work, talk to us, but I think it slipped through and it's already gone to Cabinet, hasn't it? Can somebody help me with where we are with that? Because we do want to look at it.
Chair, it's not on the current work programme. I'm just scanning through. The scrutiny function has over a number of years done a lot of work around climate change. The last report that you had in relation to something in that area was the 12th of November, when you received a report on the Staffordshire air quality.
Yes.
That pre-decision scrutiny. You've got nothing further going forward. If members feel that should be an item that's included on the future work programming, then I'm happy to accept that.
We should look at that, and we should again. We didn't properly dovetail it with the excellent work that Simon led on, and other work that's ongoing within the county. So I think we do need to kind of lasso all that together and bring it forward to the committee at some point.
Can I again, just through protocol, Chair, have the committee's agreement to that addition?
Yeah. Again, any dissent or any disagreement or any comment, please. So I think Tina's Vice Chair is saying we'd like to have a working group. We've had something of a working group on this, I believe, Tina. I'm not quite sure what you've...
I think, Chair, there have been at least 2 working groups in the last 10 years on this.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't mean that if the committee feel another working group is appropriate, because the time has shifted, then that is absolutely fine. We can arrange that, Chair.
Yeah. Darryl, put us right.
Thank you, Chair. So the County Council has a climate change action plan that's an annual plan. It needs scrutinising the delivery of it. What I'm not sure is whether it's this committee or corporate, because obviously the whole organisation has a role to play, but it must be scrutinised. And Councillor Julia Jessel is the Cabinet member for that. There are a number of existing working groups with members involved, so we just need to align it all, make sure we're not creating lots of extra groups. But that is the work that needs doing by a committee scrutinising our delivery against that action plan.
Thank you. That's really helpful, Darryl. And so therefore, Nick, if I could ask, can we just check with corporate whether this is in their bailiwick rather than ours?
At the moment, I manage both Prosperous and corporate, so that's quite easy. You can leave that with me. I think it might be a conversation between the 2 chairs. I think Darryl is quite right in his point that it is a corporate issue. It affects the entire council. But actually, Darryl's point about it must be scrutinised will be taken on board, and I'll work with people and officers on that going forward, Chair.
Okay, let's try and move on quickly, folks, because we've got an important piece of work to do in part 2. So David Smith, please.
Chairman, only a quickie. We do have a climate change working group, which is neither a scrutiny panel nor anything really reporting anywhere. And I think that possibly when we get into a new council, we need to sort out that committee's position. Is it going to become a scrutiny panel scrutinising the decision that we made some considerable time ago to declare a climate change emergency? Because that really ought to be something that we're looking at the top of our workload. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. And I think that's something that Darryl's just been talking about, really. It doesn't feel as though we've kind of, in a sense, got our scrutiny hands on this properly yet. And I think we've been doing some work in the past. But moving forward, I think it does need to take a high profile in our work programme or in the work programme of corporate. And of course, Nick's agreed to undertake whether that sits better with corporate or with us. Either way, I think we need to put some, scrutiny eyes on it, don't we, in a more constructive way. I'm going to bring in Julia Jessel, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do appreciate the opportunity. In terms of that working group to which David Smith has referred, there will be an annual report on progress that the Climate Change Action Plan has made, but also post-elections there will be a working group to engage with members, as indeed there will be for members of staff to refresh the annual Climate Change Action Plan. So members will have the opportunity, as they did before, to have input into a new plan. There is an annual planning process, but through the reporting process that I, as the Cabinet lead, will be doing, obviously scrutiny of that and of the progress of plans will be the opportunity for your select committee to look at that.
Thank you, Julia. We really appreciate that help. Vice Chairman Tina Clements, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Julia's just answered what I was going to ask. We did so much work at the start on climate change with the working group and everybody was allowed to have an input. I think it worked really well and I think we need to go back to that. So Julia just answered that question by saying that we will have that input post-election. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tina. And so, Nick, just to kind of reiterate, our ask here really is where this sits and then can we kind of bring it together so that we've got a more comprehensive scrutiny plan around climate change, environmental matters, etc. So we'll leave that with you to get back to.
I totally agree, Chair. I will take that on board and I will work with the authority and make sure it's dealt with in the appropriate place and that member involvement is substantial following the comments that have been made.
Fantastic, thank you. And thanks to the input members and cabinet members on that, so that we're clear about where we're going, because it's really important that we don't lose sight of that. Okay, I'm therefore going to move on to item 7, which is exclusion of the public. Just for clarity, this is that we're now closing the public part of this meeting and moving into a private session, simply because we need to discuss a matter which has commercial confidentiality aspects to it. And that is to talk about the HWRC, the House Waste Recycling Centre future. So I therefore move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business, which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act of 1972 indicated below. So if you can assure me that are public and seconded. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Tina. Can you assure me that the public camera is now off? We're now no longer live.
If you just pause, can you please pause, Chair? And as soon as the webcast is